One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything that happens in their spots.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I'm joined today by Frank Kendall, who served as Secretary of the Air Force during the Biden administration and just published a damning op-ed in the New York Times about the Trump administration's assault on the U.S. military, titled "America Has a Rogue President." Frank, welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. A ton of attention has been paid to the dismissal of the GFOs, the general and flag officers, the 4 stars, some of whom you reported directly to, or who reported directly to you. Let's get that right. But I don't think enough attention has been paid to the dismissal of the JAGs. They're not as high profile. Most people don't even know their names. Why is that so ominous?
Well, Secretary Hegseth has said some things about how unhappy he is with Judge Advocate Generals in general. His allusions have been about operational decisions where, the laws of armed conflict, I think, have restrained, operators on the ground from doing what they want to do, generally applying a lot more firepower, I think. But there's much more to it than that. The Judge Advocate Generals are the leading legal authorities for the military and each of the military departments. And to just blanket remove them all, I think to me is very clearly a move to put people into those positions who are going to be more compliant in general with what the administration wants to do. I worked on the torture issue, some years ago, and one of the heroes of that era was the Navy Judge Advocate General, who spoke up and resisted. He lost his job, had to resign, I think, as a result. But these people are very principled. They're very loyal to the nation and to the rule of law. And they're going to tell military commanders their best legal opinion about when something that they've been told to do, an order, is unlawful and should not be obeyed. And apparently this administration wants to put people in who will go along with whatever the administration wants to do.
This seems like an academic exercise until you read headlines that say 3,000 active duty troops are headed to the border. Can you paint for us I'll call it the worst case scenario, but it's not all that far-fetched these days.
Now, during the first Trump term, General Milley was asked to go use the Army to put down protests, I think, in Portland, Oregon, and he refused to do so. Under our law, there are things you cannot have the military do without at least going through appropriate processes and so on. So whether to invoke, say, the Insurrection Act or to do something which is inconsistent with what posse comitatus it's called. It's a Latin term for basically using the military to assist law enforcement, right? And in our society, you're generally not allowed to do that. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, you cannot just send the military off to do whatever you want it to do against American citizens. And this would, I think, open the door for some abuses of those constraints.
We played a clip at the top of this episode showing Secretary of Defense Hegseth referring to JAGs as roadblocks. Roadblocks to what? I mean, it suggests a mindset that is really dismissive of the role of law in the exercise of power, the law of armed conflict. Can you help us understand their thinking?
Yeah, Ken, that was what in part provoked my op-ed. There's a pattern here of disrespect, even disdain for the rule of law. And you see it very consistently. There's evidence of it everywhere, all sorts of behaviors. I think there are over 75 lawsuits against this administration already for violations of either statute or the Constitution. So this is all a part of that very same pattern. And when it comes to laws that constrain the use of violence by the military, I think that should be concerning to every American citizen.
Hey, it's Ken. Quick break to let you know we've got a Substack page for the Ken Harbaugh Show. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, check it out. A lot of you already have. Thank you so much. And if you're able to, please subscribe. Every dollar goes back into the show to help with research, production, and reporting from places like Ukraine. None of this happens without your support. Thank you. Welcome to the resistance. At the end of your op-ed, you describe a moment in which, as an observer for Human Rights First, an organization, by the way, that we've talked a lot about on this show, we've had Mike Breen, former president of the organization, on frequently. You're observing procedures down at Guantanamo, and you witness the military JAGs there doing their duty to defend the detainees there to the best of their ability. Doesn't matter who the detainee is, you do your job as a lawyer. And you called that one of your proudest moments as an American. How confident can we be that that is a strong enough culture within the JAG Corps that this administration won't be able to find JAGs who abandon their values for the sake of loyalty to the president?
Look, there are people certainly in the military who believe with what the administration's saying. They share those views. I think in general I have confidence in the JAG officer corps that those people will act according to the principles and the values that they have that we all share. But I think there will be a litmus test of some kind for people to get those positions. We'll see what happens there. But there's no question that this administration is looking for loyalty, and they're looking for compliance with whatever the administration wants to do. We saw a great example of that over the weekend after the debacle in the White House with President Zelensky, and people coming online to defend the president and the vice president and attack the Ukrainians. So there will be people, I think, if they look for them, that they can find that they might be able to put in those jobs. There are only a handful of general officers in each of the services in the JAG Corps of military lawyers. So if they go out of that group, which is very small, maybe 4 or 5 people at most, then they're not going to have very many to choose from. It's not unheard of to move somebody from the 1-star level to the 3-star level. I've done it myself a couple of times. So they will try to find people. I don't know exactly how they're going to check on that. Maybe one way or another, they'll try to confirm that there are people who are going to be more accommodating. I'll just put it that way of what the administration wants to do. I think that's very dangerous.
I do too. We saw a very ominous portent of that in some of the statements President Trump made about his new nominee for chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Whether it's true or not, the president said that in a conversation with this general, the general said, "I will kill for you, sir." That's what the president thinks the job of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is, and by extension, the military, to be his own personal army. And that, to me, was the clearest indicator yet that he does not understand the role of the American military.
Yeah, I know General Kane. I don't know him extremely well, but I know him, and I think we ought to wait and see what happens there. He's had a good career. He's a guard general officer. I know him as he worked with the DNI, with the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA. Didn't know him well. Again, he didn't report directly to me. So I think we ought to reserve judgment on General Kane.
I'm fine reserving judgment on General Kane, but the fact is the president said that about
I do.
General
Yeah,
Kane.
I agree.
The president said he said he would kill for me. That is an indictment of the president's attitude towards the military, and we'll see if the military is able to push back.
Anybody who wears a uniform will follow a lawful order to use violence to kill, in defense of the nation. That's part of what the profession is. But to do it outside the rule of law is another matter entirely.
And that's why the JAG Corps, part of the reason the JAG Corps exists, to provide not only advice to the commanders, but to provide that guardrail, to be in some sense the conscience of the military. And this administration's attempt to gut that is really an ominous indicator.
I can understand the frustration of troops in contact sometimes. An example I use is that if you're engaged by a single sniper from a village, you can't bring in an artillery barrage or bombing and destroy the entire village as a result of that. You're going to have to do something else. These constraints can be kind of frustrating on the ground, but they're there for a good reason. They're there to comply with the laws of armed conflict. They're also there to execute a national strategy and to do things consistent with the rules of engagement. They're put in place for a very good reason. I don't know. Secretary Hegseth has only served at the level of major as his highest level. So I don't know that he appreciates that there are higher levels of points of view that need to be taken into account. But that's where he is serving right now. He's serving at the top of the Defense Department.
Indeed. I want to close with the last paragraph of your op-ed and just get your update on it. Now that we're a week into the media coverage of it, you wrote, "Our country is in uncharted territory. We have an administration that is waging war against the rule of law. The evidence is everywhere. America has a rogue president and a rogue administration, and we need to acknowledge that and respond." What should our response be?
We're all American citizens. We all have a lot of rights as citizens. There are a lot of things we can do. We can write to and call our congressman. We can organize ourselves. We can make it very visible how we feel about what the administration is doing. President Trump will respond, I think, to public pressure once it's visible to him and he understands that he's on the wrong side of where the nation wants to go. We also have an election coming up in 20 months. We need to get ready for that and do some things to get ready for that. Some of us have ways through the courts to do things as well. So there are a lot of tools available. First thing is to recognize how serious a problem we have, and then to start to get involved and get engaged by any of the mechanisms that are available to us. A 4-year term is a long, long time, and we're going to have to. I think we're just starting this. I think we're going to see a lot more. And just since I wrote that piece, we had the debacle on Friday, where you're seeing in real time 80 years of successful national security strategy upended and reversed, essentially. We haven't had a major war between large powers for about 80 years. We have had a period of peace and stability in the world, largely, in which a lot of us have prospered together. America gets a great deal out of our strategic alliances. They are enormous value to us. And to toss one overboard on a transactional basis like we saw happening on Friday, and to treat a president of a nation, a sovereign state, who has basically been fighting for the very existence of that state in a brutal conflict for 3 years, the way we saw our president treat him, was just tremendously embarrassing to me.
While we've got you, as a former Secretary of the Air Force, can you weigh in on the threat of proliferation? The idea that if America is not going to back its allies, some of them will only have one option, which is to take care of their own strategic deterrence. Can you explain the threat of that?
That's a really good point, Ken. For the entirety of the Cold War and beyond, America's nuclear arsenal has basically provided a nuclear umbrella for all of our partners. And so we have limited nuclear proliferation substantially because of that. If people can't count on that anymore, they don't think the U.S. will back them up with that massive amount of capability, then there's going to be temptations to get nuclear weapons themselves. I mean, you already see pieces about this. You see people speculating about it. I think that would be very dangerous and very destabilizing. It's the opposite of the direction in which we should be going.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Kendall, for joining us. I hope we don't have to check in again soon, but we may. We are in dark times.
Thanks, Ken. Great to be with you.
Thank you.